Welcome back. All right, so there are 5 teams currently fighting for 2 playoff spots. So of the teams on the board, 40% of them make the playoffs, 60% of them don't. And the odd part is Philadelphia is still at the top of the board. They are still the number 3 team in the Metro. 76 games, a record of 36, 29, and 11, 83 points. Of their 6 remaining games, 1 of the 6 remaining games are against other teams on the board. Now, I did get a bit of a chuckle last night because I saw like they were talking about the Eastern run and they're like, oh, well, the Flyers have the easiest schedule. And I laughed and said out loud, they got schooled by the Blackhawks. So there is no easy game with the Philadelphia Flyers. And not only that, we talk about strength of schedule during the season a lot. I think it means a lot less at this time of year, and I'll explain. A lot of the teams at the top, a lot of the teams that have basically got their playoff ticket punched, this is when they start sitting players. This is when you start seeing them not putting full rosters out there, and you see fans of teams on this board getting mad because, oh, hey, let's say at the end here, Washington needs to win that last game, or one of the last games against the Lightning or the Bruins, and both the Lightning and the Bruins ice rosters that are not great rosters because they're resting guys for the playoffs. So their last game's against the Flyers. That's why I pivoted and went away from last game because, yeah, that game against the Flyers could be really key, couldn't it? So for the Flyers, tonight they're at Buffalo. And so you look at that and you go, well, they should beat Buffalo. There's been a lot of games they should win and teams they should beat, and they found a way not to recently. Then on Saturday, they're in Columbus. So that's a back-to-back. If they can win both, go to 87 points, they do themselves a great favor in terms of staying above that playoff line. Then on Tuesday, they're at Montreal against the Canadiens. So those are 3 winnable games. But again, Philadelphia's found a way not to win winnable games lately. And then on Thursday, they're at the Rangers. Following that, they come home for their final 2. First on Saturday against the Devils. And as mentioned previously, Tuesday against the Washington Capitals. So they are in control of their own destiny. They have a schedule that definitely looks like they should win, I would say, 4 out of the 6 minimum. Again, the Rangers are a team that could be resting players, right? Who knows? Maybe they'll have locked up the President's Trophy by then, and they won't be worried about about it. But their record since March the 1st, 5-7-4, and the record over their last 10 is 2-5-3. They lost their last game in extra time. So at least they got a point out of it. But again, that record of 36, 29, and 11, it is definitely vulnerable to teams beneath them in the standings because there are 2 teams with a game in hand who are within a point of them. So Philadelphia is not in control of their own destiny, though they do have a schedule that you might look at and say, well, they should be in the playoffs. They got schooled by Chicago. So the New York Islanders, 76 games, a record of 34, 27, and 15, 83 points overall. They're the number 2 wild card currently. 1 of the 6 remaining games they have are against a team on the board. So they're against the Preds tomorrow. That's a home game for the Islanders. That'll be interesting because, of course, the Preds are still fighting for potentially... I mean, I guess they could still move up and catch Winnipeg, right? But in reality, for Nashville, they want to make sure they have that number 1 wild card spot, and they maintain that. On Tuesday, the Islanders host the Rangers. That should be fun. Thursday, they host the Montreal Canadiens. So Montreal's going to be playing a few of the teams on this board here, and it will be interesting to see whether or not Montreal helps to knock a team out of the playoffs. They could. They absolutely could. They played spoiler relatively well. Then they go to New York and play the Rangers on Saturday. They play in New Jersey against the Devils on Monday, and then they come home and play Pittsburgh on the Wednesday. So Philadelphia rounds out its schedule against the Caps. The Islanders round out their schedule against the Penguins. There is the reality here that we could see this decided on the last night of the season. So 9-7-1 record for the Islanders since March the 1st. Over their last 10, they're 5-5. They've won 3 in a row. And so they find themselves above the playoff line because they passed the Capitals last night. The Caps have a chance tonight to jump back above both the Islanders and the Philadelphia Flyers, right? Although the Flyers play tonight as well. So we'll see how it goes. Now, tonight for Washington, they're at Carolina, and that's going to be tough. Carolina, of course, still likely looking at the standings and saying, we could catch the Rangers. It's still there. Then on Sunday, the Caps host the Senators. On Tuesday, they go to Detroit and play the Red Wings. On Thursday, they're in Buffalo against the Sabres. On Saturday, they're at home against Tampa. Monday, they're at home against Boston. And then on the Tuesday, they're in Philadelphia against the Flyers. So that's their 82nd game as well. So 2 of their 7 remaining games are against teams on the board. 1 against Philly, 1 against Detroit. Capitals are in a pretty decent spot, although they are 9-7-1 since March the 1st, 5-4-1 in their last 10, and importantly, they've lost their last 2 in regulation, when all they've needed is a point. So it's been interesting to watch as the days pass, the weeks pass, and watch which fan base is most panicked right now, or which fan base is like, hey, we're going to punch our ticket, we're going to be good, because from one week to the next, it can change completely. Detroit's one that stands out here. I'm wearing Detroit because I'll be optimistic that they make it, but it's not going to be easy. They have a record of 37-30-8. They have 82 points in 75 games as well. Tonight, they're at home against the Rangers. Not easy. As mentioned, the Rangers likely to win the President's Trophy. The Rangers are on the board playing against 3 of the 5 teams, so they will have a say in who does or doesn't make the playoffs. Then on Sunday, Detroit hosts Buffalo. On Tuesday, they host Washington. On Thursday, they're at Pittsburgh. Saturday, they're at Toronto. And then they have a home-and-home against Montreal on the Monday and the Tuesday. So it's interesting that Detroit's final 3 games are against Canadian teams. The last 2 against the Montreal Canadiens. And so this is a schedule that I think is favorable to Detroit. 2 of the 7 remaining games against teams on the board. So if they can beat the Capitals and the Penguins, they help themselves tremendously. Those are back-to-backs. And then, not back-to-backs as in one night after another, but they play those teams back-to-back. The back-to-back is right here against the Canadiens. But they're 4-9-2 since March the 1st. They've been trending in the wrong direction. And Detroit's been losing games they should win. Over their last 10, though, they're 4-4-2. They did win their last game, so Detroit is absolutely in the mix. I will be fascinated to see with the Detroit Red Wings how things go over this next little while. I know there are people who think the Yzer plan grading process is going to be decided in these 7 games. In other words, if they don't make the playoffs, well, the Yzer plan's failed. If they make the playoffs, it's been a success. I would say the fact that we're talking about Detroit and it's April the 5th in regards of playoffs tells you it's already been a success. At this time last year, Detroit had faded. They sold at the deadline and just weren't able to compete. They fell off quite a bit. This year, they have not. And then you got Pittsburgh. 76 games, a record of 35-30-11, 81 points. And what have I always said about Pittsburgh? I never count them out. But a couple weeks ago, there was plenty of reason to think, yeah, they're basically done. But because nobody else is really grabbing hold of these playoff positions, it's allowed Pittsburgh to sneak back in. 2 of their remaining 6 games are against teams on the board, so they have some control over their fate. Tomorrow they're at home against Tampa Bay. That won't be easy. Then they play Toronto on the Monday. That's in Toronto. They come back home on Thursday, play against the Red Wings. On Saturday, they're at home against the Bruins. On Monday, they're at home against the Preds. And then they finish the season at the Islanders. So again, these teams finish up against one another, with the exception being Detroit. Now, 2 of 6, as I said, against teams listed on the board. The Penguins are 8-8-3 since March the 1st, but they're 6-2-2 over their last 10, and they've won 3 in a row. So I do expect that, you know what, I would not be entirely surprised if Detroit and Pittsburgh were the ones that did it. So Pittsburgh jumps in and grabs that 3rd spot, and Detroit gets that 2nd wild card. At the same time, if it was the Islanders, the Capitals, like, really, honestly, you can make an argument for any team on the board. The one that's a challenge to make the argument for right now is Philly, because they've been 2-5-3 over their last 10, and it just feels like they've taken themselves from a pretty comfortable playoff spot and made it so that the odds of them making the playoffs are not what they were. And so let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're a Flyers fan, do you believe they can turn this around, or are they already done? Which sounds crazy with 6 games left, but when you're 2-5-3 in your last 10 and you've got so many games or so many other teams behind you, plus you've got 2 that have a game in hand and are only 1 point back, again, considering how they haven't been able to get those points lately, yeah. The next 3 games are going to be huge for Philly, but that could be said of any team on the board. But if Philly can't win the games against Buffalo, Columbus, and Montreal and get some momentum going, they're not going to be in the playoffs, because then they have the Rangers, the Devils, and the Capitals to round it out. And if they don't get points in those next 3 games, I can almost guarantee other teams will. So let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I'm really glad that this race in the East is there, because the West is kind of settled already. The West is kind of settled about which top 8 teams are going to make it. Last night's results, St. Louis losing that game last night, LA getting another win. It just feels like the West is kind of settled. The East is not. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.